So, how's your day started?
Pretty good, actually.
Yep.
I woke up naturally before the sunrise, got up and did my yoga and got the house all tidy and ready to go before kicking off a productive morning. So I'm in a good place. How about yourself?
Yeah, we've had just a nice, easy start to the day. So some emails and started work on that. So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. It's got a beautiful day here in Sydney, haven't we? So
we sure have. I haven't seen the outside of it yet, but I'll try and get out in the sunshine before it disappears.
Okay. So what we'll do, I'll just introduce you. So I'll do a small pause, and then what we'll do is we'll read through your bio, and that's when we'll just leap into having a fireside chat. So, all right.
Fabulous.
Hi, and welcome to the Jeff Buller Show. Today we've got Frances Quinn with us, and I'm just going to read you a little bit about Frances and her adventures and journey over well, not all her life. We aren't going to go that far. But Frances Quinn is the founder and CEO of Athena Consulting. Starting from humble beginnings, she left school at 16 and set about making her way in the corporate business world. After an 18-year career collecting skills, knowledge and experience spanning customer service, people leadership, business operations, project leadership, and operational effectiveness, Frances took the leap into entrepreneurship and started her own consulting firm. And over the last 6 years, Frances has focused on driving sustainable growth and building a high-performing team for Athena, delivering projects that have impacted over 1 million customers, delivered cost savings of over $10 million, enabled businesses to 10x their growth. Frances and Athena have both been recognised as winners of the Stevie International Business Awards and as finalists in MyBusiness, Women with Attitude and New South Wales Chamber of Commerce Awards last year in 2019. Throughout Frances' journey, she has overcome many personal challenges, developing resilience and personal growth mindset, which have been huge contributors to the success she has achieved in her business. She is currently writing a book called Surrender Success to share the methods she has used to fuel her journey in life and business with a highly driven and ambitious humans. Now, one other interesting fact about Frances is she can juggle. So
I sure can. Don't ask me for a demonstration. I'm a little rusty.
So what got you into juggling?
The most important question of the day. I think a little bit of boredom, and I believe I started with fruit. You know, just something to do with my hands, something to keep me busy. My mind's always occupied, and usually I've always got a piece of paper and a pen because I scribble when I think. And so, in the absence of that, I suppose I was just trying to keep my hands active.
Okay. So I don't know what you'd call that condition where you actually can't. You're wanting to play with your hands all the time. I don't know what that is. Is that a medical condition?
Probably, but don't tell anybody.
Okay, right. Yeah, well, I won't tell all our listeners either.
No, it's our little secret.
Yeah. So you're in the business of consulting and helping contact centers. Is that correct? That's the main area that you're focused on. So now we're in the middle of a very interesting time on the planet at the moment with the pandemic sort of continuing to unfold and spread and be suppressed and rise and fall. So what, before we get into that, because that may be a better question to ask later, but contact centers may be quite important now, and I think will become even more important. So, but before we get to that, what got you into, starting a consulting business where you actually advise corporations and government to actually put together contact centers that work really, really well and efficiently? So what got you into that?
Oh, look, this is sort of a lifelong journey for me in that space. There are probably two components of the answer to that question. The first is my mother was in customer service from when I was little. She was a single mom. I used to go to her office after school care type stuff and run around and stuff envelopes, and we won't call it child labor, but do things to keep myself busy. Maybe that's where the need to keep my hands active came from, but do things to keep myself busy while she finished up at work. And so I was sort of in the world of customer experience from a really young age, and always knew that's where I wanted to go. So, you know, in terms of that as my subject matter, I built a you know, 18 plus year career in multiple different modalities in that customer experience and customer service contact center space. And in terms of why I then started a business consulting in that world, that was really, that sort of happened by chance. It was a bit of an accidental entrepreneur type situation. I didn't set out to go, right, that's it, I'm going to go conquer the world. I just had a couple of redundancies in a row, which I'm sure a lot of people are feeling right now in the current environment. And the path just laid out for me. I had I found out I was getting made redundant on the Friday, and on the Monday I got a phone call saying, "Hey, do you know anybody with this skill set in this location who can do a project like this on a 12-month contract?" And I went, "Actually, yes, I do. I'm available," and the rest just kind of unfolded from there.
Right. So you go in, and so tell me a little bit about what you do in terms of consulting that area. So I know nothing about contact centers except that I try and avoid ringing them because I just don't really put them on hold.
So do I. So do I.
I've tried to contact them sometimes. I remember that some of the new technology that's emerged is that you actually go to a website and you will just actually start a chat. And so that's the new tech that sort of emerged, hasn't it, over the last little while?
Yep.
And I've actually found that very, very effective. So, but how's that sort of technology? And I think maybe this is part of what we can chat about today very much is, how's that technology impacting customer service and contact centers? How's technology impacting your business and what companies are doing, governments are doing to actually support people who are calling in?
Yeah, look, it's been a really fascinating journey and an incredible time over the last 25 years now that I've been actively in the industry, and a few more than that I've been surrounded by it. And technology has played a massive part in that evolution. Back in the day, you would have called we called the industry a call center, and that was synonymous with a lot of telemarketing, right? The dreaded, the phone rings at 7 p.m., the house phone. Who has a landline these days? I haven't had one for years. The house phone rings at 7 o'clock at night when you're sitting down to dinner, and it's somebody trying to sell you a new mobile phone plan or something. And that was kind of where this call center industry started, and some of the initial negative connotations started coming from the sweatshop style vibe and things like that. But technology has been the trigger that has made the industry evolve and created so much opportunity. And it is such an exciting space to play in, because with the advancement of, initially it was things like speech recognition that didn't go so well in Australia. We had a couple of early adopters that didn't do it very well, and so everybody got very upset about trying to speak to a robot that couldn't understand your accent, and ultimately ended up putting you through to the wrong department. So that was another situation that didn't necessarily go as well as it could have. But things like chat, things like social media on the customer facing layer are completely transforming the way that customers engage with their brands. And it's becoming one of the most important deciding factors in who I deal with, right? You used to have a contract with your telephone company, or with your mobile phone provider, and you couldn't break that contract, and so you were stuck with them forever. And their customer service wasn't a deciding factor; it was all about price. And once you were there, you were locked in. But increasingly, customer experiences with the brands that we engage with are not locked in contracts, and it's not as much of a price war anymore. And so a lot of customers are tending to make a decision based on the customer experience that's offered and how convenient it is for me to do business with you. And can I jump onto the website and have a chat at 10 p.m. at night, because that's when I've got time in my busy social and business and family life to deal with that mobile phone bill question that I've got, or the gas company inquiry. And that's becoming the competitive differentiator for a lot of organizations that are savvy enough to realize that investment in the technology at that layer is what's really going to set them apart from the company next door that's not doing that.
Yeah, because you've got, like you said, there's a lot of different modalities, isn't there now? So different ways which you can touch the customer, and they can also the outreach. So I suppose if we break up into two categories, you've got, number one, you've got the outbound customer contact center, haven't you? Which is the sales side. And then you've got the one which is more the customer service, where you're ringing in to actually try and solve a problem or get something fixed. So, so in terms of current tech now, for example, when I see an unknown number come through, right, I don't answer it. I really don't. If they actually have something worth talking about, they're going to leave a message. So I'm screening all the time. And typically I can go, they didn't leave a message, going, well, I know who that was. They're trying to sell me something. Upsell me, whatever. So look, in terms of outbound, what have you seen over the years with that sort of, the impact of that? Do you think that, look, it must be a lot of people like me that just don't pick up the phone.
There absolutely are. There's a very small subset of the population left that do respond to outbound telemarketing type activities. And so they're having to get a little bit savvier with it. What we're seeing a trend towards is more outbound SMS, outbound messenger on Facebook. And so people reaching out in other ways. You might not answer a phone call from a number that you don't know, but if you receive a text message on your phone, you're going to look at it. You might not act, but you're at least going to look at it, right? Because we're still trained to review those sorts of inbound communications. And the same thing with Facebook Messenger. That's being used incredibly quickly, and it's increasing incredibly quickly, the use of that as a marketing platform for the initial cold outreach from all sorts of companies. So it's definitely an area that has shifted very dramatically, and I think we'll see it continue to shift a lot more. And the world of social media marketing and ads on Facebook and ads on YouTube and ads on every online platform we touch is starting to take the place of the traditional door knocking or outbound phone call type campaign.
Yeah. You're right. So you got Facebook Messenger, and then it got the changes, like Facebook keeps changing its rules, like how many times you can use Messenger to actually reach out. And if people haven't responded within 24 hours at the moment, not allowed to actually use it. So there's a whole range of different, I suppose, evolution of outbound. So you've talked about Facebook Messenger. So social media has changed the industry. The smartphones also changed the industry. The website has changed the industry. We've also, originally it was literally, and I remember I have done cold calling, as in on the phone in the past, in a previous career when I was selling computers. It was like, get on the phone, and the first 2 hours every day was cold calling. And then I've actually even done door knocking. So what are the biggest, now you work with a whole range of customers and a whole range of different technologies. So, and you've seen, I suppose, the technology that sits inside, which is the heart and soul, I think, of a customer contact center, would be the software that drives it. So tell us a little bit about how that's, how that's evolving, and what are some of the bigger players in that area, such as the platforms that actually drive, customer centers?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of core functionalities that need to exist within a contact center. So the internal operation of a contact center operation is incredibly complex, and probably one of the most systemized and regimented functions that you would see in any business. So typically speaking, the predominant technology that everybody operates on is the telecommunications platform, right? It's the phone calls, it's the it's the platform via which we would receive and track and report and record email interactions and text message interactions and messenger chat interactions, and now chatbot interactions, where we've got, you know, a robot sitting in the seat of a human effectively and having conversations with our customers. And so the primary heartbeat of that customer contact operation is that communications platform. But sitting around that, there needs to be knowledge, right? I, as the person on the phone who might get 17 different types of questions across 17 different parts of my parent business, I need the answers at my fingertips at conversational speed, so that when you ask me a question, I don't do the, I'm sorry, can you just hold on a minute while I find the answer to that, right? Then, so the knowledge-based platform has to be absolutely, you know, lightning fast and organized and structured in such a way that I can get the answer if it's not something I answer 30 times a day and therefore just know off the top of my head. We also need what's called a workforce optimization suite, which is where we start looking at call recording. So how we quality control and coach our people to make sure that they're having conversations at the right level. And that's becoming increasingly digital, where we've got digital sort of flags that will pop up if a particular tone or a particular word is registered in the customer's conversation. So technology is absolutely transforming the way that internal, all of the different internal functions of a contact center operation occur. And how we ensure we're efficient, right? We've often got thousands of people across multiple different, what we would call queues, or different types of inquiries across multiple different channels. So social media, chat, phone, etc. That we need to organize and coordinate, and we need to forecast and predict what volume we've got coming in, and then we need to figure out how many people we need to answer that volume in, you know, an appropriate time, so that you're not sitting on hold for 4 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on the organization that you call, and you get an appropriate level of service for the product that you're needing support with, or the product you're trying to buy, of course. And so that is quite a complex ecosystem, and that's before you get into any you know, enterprise-wide technologies that need to exist to house the overarching company's kind of knowledge and knowledge assets. So you know, in short, there are a wide variety of technologies that are available, and depending on the size and scale and maturity of the contact center operation, depends on which of those they might choose to deploy. So there are platforms like Genesis that run whole of organization, and they kind of do all of those things. And so they have a full breadth. But if you're an absolutely giant organization and you need to integrate with other platforms, you might need more sophisticated standalone capabilities that all sort of plug in and talk to each other, rather than one like cross-platform capability. So there are a lot of market players, and Gartner is always keeping their eye on the prize in terms of assessing both the new players, new and emerging players, and the you know, the established technology providers within the industry, and sort of rating them for their different strengths and weaknesses. And it's the most exciting element, I think, around all of that is the transition of many of those very, you know, they're platforms that have been around for a really long time. And so the coding and the logic behind them is incredibly sophisticated, and they're moving to a cloud-based application suite, which means that they're obviously a lot more accessible, and that it opens up a whole new world of being able to create accessibility to the different products and platforms that that a contact center needs, whether they're giant international with thousands of seats across the globe, or a little local council with 30 seats sitting around the corner.
Yeah. So as the tech you're talking about cloud technology, which allows, obviously updates to be done, for everyone instantly, essentially when they upgrade the software. But and also the recent changes in, I suppose, the situation on the planet at the moment with the pandemic, is that there's our contact centers used to be just big buildings with lots of people in them. What's happening in that space? Is it becoming much more distributed and more virtual, as in people are doing support from home?
There has been a big shift to that, which has been a hero story for those organizations that had already started the journey to cloud and had already created a work from home capability. That's actually been a sort of desired state capability for our industry for a really long time. And that's for many reasons. It provides work-life balance, and in terms of that rostering dynamic that I mentioned before, where we need to have enough people on the phones to answer the calls that we forecasted. Sometimes things don't go to plan, and sometimes we've got all sorts of interesting peaks and troughs to manage through. And so the ability to have a collection of people that work from home, albeit not quite to the degree that we need in pandemic times, but that's been that gives such a degree of flexibility to the organization that it's been sort of the desired state, and what a lot of organizations have been moving to for a really long time. So the cloud-based technology, while not exclusively, you can certainly deploy a work from home model if you don't have cloud-based technology, by creating VPN connections into on-premise software and things of that nature. But the cloud-based technology certainly enabled a lot of people who didn't previously have that in place to turn it around within a week.
Yeah.
From woe to go, we can't do any work from home to, okay, we're fully work from home enabled, and everybody pick up your laptop and go home now. So there have been some incredible stories of I won't call it a pivot, but of rapid deployment of that work from home capability that have come out of the pandemic. And for that reason, I'm actually really excited for what our industry looks like, and the business world in general looks like on the other side of this. Mm-hmm. Global, or large sort of foundational players such as Telstra and Optus have also already indicated that they will maintain a work from home capability and operating model through the other side of all of this, because they realize the efficiencies that it brings, the work-life balance that it brings, the cost benefits. If you don't have to have a floor that seats 400 people right in the heart of the city, then that can only be financially better for an organization as well. And so I think we'll see a lot more of it moving forward, even after pandemic times are well behind us.
Yeah, so what the pandemic's really doing is it's pushing people into the future faster.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And I'm not all for the pandemic. That, obviously it is an incredibly challenging time for us to go through, but I'm all for the progress that will come as a result. Mm.
So let's talk a little bit about your business and the challenges you've had. So
sure.
you moved into that area as a consultant because you were working in the business in contact centers for all your working life, really, isn't it? So that's where you've been since you left school at 16. So what have been some of the biggest challenges? Like, so you had, when you got made redundant, that was a little shove into consulting, and then there was, on the Monday you had to call after the Friday, you had this offer to take a 12-month contract consulting.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how that first year was. I'd be fascinated to hear that.
Yeah, that was that was actually, interestingly, that first year was almost like falling back into the pattern of being an employee, except in hindsight, looking back at the projects that I took on, there's no way I should have taken it on by myself. It was it was probably 4 people's worth of work, and so I well underscoped it in my naivety. But I'm a person that loves a challenge, and so it ended up being extended. So we worked with that client for about 18 months, and we ultimately delivered the outcome with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears along the way. So that first year almost seemed normal. It didn't actually challenge me too much in the context of the paradigm of being a consultant now, because I just got up every Monday to Friday and I went to work and I did that job for that client. It was actually on sort of day 18 months plus one. Well, I think that day I probably put my feet up and had a cocktail and went, whoa, that was pretty full on. But it was the tail end and the aftermath that really made me as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. And that's when I got the harsh reality slap in the face that business isn't just going to land on my lap every time that I'm ready for it to, and that I would have to learn how to market and how to sell and how to run an efficient and effective business and how to create products. And you know, I realized I stepped into conscious incompetence and realized how much I didn't know, and begun my journey of moving towards sort of conscious competence and beyond. So, you know, that in terms of challenges in the business, that was probably my first and most significant one. And there's a day that stands out very, very clearly in my mind that was probably close to 4 or 5 months after I'd finished that first project. I'd had no work since then. I'd, you know, rung a few people and gone, hi, I'm available. And, you know, not realizing that's not how you sell a product or a service. And I was kind of on the floor of the kitchen. I had a whiteboard there that was just blank, trying to figure out how I moved this thing forward. How do I actually create something from this? And so in my pajamas on the floor of my kitchen in tears was the, you know, phoenix rising from the ashes moment, where I picked myself up and I went, what is it that I know that no other consulting firm does? Or like, what's my niche? What's my specialty? What's the thing that I can bring that other people can't bring? And I created a product around that. And I invested the next couple of weeks in fleshing that out and building some flyers and some assets, and kind of took my last couple of $1,000s and paid for a sponsorship booth at a technology industry conference, and went out and, you know, put myself out into the world. And that was the moment that I started making connections, and I got one client off that, and then another one a few weeks later, and the trickle began. And that's kind of when the real, what I would call the real business journey began.
So you went from something landing in your lap to going, what am I doing? What product am I selling?
Yep.
And it's like, I suppose that moment where you, trying to work out what next. So,
yeah.
So what was different? What was a product you developed after that 2 weeks of whiteboarding and pajama writing?
So it was called the WOW framework, the Well Optimized Workforce Framework. So I mentioned that resourcing dilemma of forecasting what we're going to receive from our customers and how many people we need to handle that demand. That was one of the roles that I did throughout my journey in the contact center world. And it's an art and a science, and a very specialized capability. So a lot of organizations find it quite difficult to find people that have skills in that area. And ultimately it's the capability that determines whether a contact center is highly efficient or, you know, bleeding money, essentially. Because if you're paying for somebody to be sitting on the phones and there's no calls coming through, or emails or chats or whatever, then ultimately you're paying for somebody to sit there and twiddle their thumbs. They don't have another job to do like you or I would. If there's emails to do, and if there's not, there's always something else. And so I built a product which was essentially an audit or an assessment around how effective the workforce management or workforce optimization function was within an organization, and develop a roadmap to help improve it. And went out there and got that out in the world. And it's actually, the foundation of that product is still what exists in one of our most popular products today. We've just kind of broadened the scope to be a whole of contact center operational audit, as opposed to very specifically a deep dive into the workforce management space. But yeah, definitely had some divine inspiration there, because it's definitely held its own for the last 5 years or so since we launched it.
So you've got your first couple of clients now. You've put up a booth, put up the shingle for real now, instead of just being on a contract, which, like you said, was pretty like just really just working under a different guise.
Yep.
You know, in other words, so what was the first? So obviously you need to scale what you're doing because there's only one of you. So
yep.
So what was the first hire? And I suppose you have a virtual team, I would most probably think.
Yes, our team is located a little bit of everywhere. My first hire, I started work on a project for a New South Wales government entity who needed to look at creating a brand new customer contact function, which is like the dream project, right? I get a blank piece of paper and get to create something new, which doesn't happen in our space very often. So I sort of did the initial 3-month scoping and preparing for that with them, and then it was time. I got the big green tick saying yes, it's approved. We're going to go ahead and we're going to deliver this project. And in making that decision, we obviously had to build the project team. So that was my first opportunity to bring a new team member on board who is still with me today. He's one of my foundation team members, and you know, we built on from there. And that in itself absolutely brought its own challenges in terms of me working full time on a client project, and then initially having 3, and then we built to 5, and a little beyond that. So trying to manage the business operations and the team and my own client delivery all of a sudden became a 700-hour-a-week job that I didn't, couldn't juggle. While I can juggle, that's one thing I found I couldn't juggle, and so that sort of journey is what led me into stepping away from doing client delivery and actually taking that next step in the evolution of being a business owner and running a business and doing strategy and, building out the foundations that would enable it to scale well beyond me. So
you've started hiring your virtual team and building that out. You've created a product now. In other words, you've productized a service.
Yep.
And that was the WOW product, which quite like the name really. Well-optimized workforce.
That's right.
So what were some of the other big challenges over the last 5 or 6 years that you struck as you now got a product, you moved beyond, just a contract to actually having a proper business, you started hiring your first team member. What are some of the other big challenges you've had in terms of, and biggest challenges you've had in the last 5, 6 years?
Yeah, look, I think the main one is actually not a business challenge. It's a self-belief challenge. It's the whole imposter syndrome side of the world. And I joined up to a business training and education program and sat down in my first class going, okay, I'm finally, I'm going to commit to learning what I don't know about running a business. And then I had this moment sitting in the first session where they're talking about systemizing a business and went, whoa, hang on a second. I know this. I could be up there teaching this. I've just never looked at it. I've never looked at my business as a business. I've never looked at it as something that I could apply all of the skills I've gained in my corporate career and, how to budget and how to manage a team and how to create structure and how to build a strategy and all of the things that you need to do as a business owner. I had experience in 85% of that from my corporate career. I just never been brave enough to go, this is a business and I'm going to set targets for it and I'm going to work this business and move it towards a goal. And so getting out of my own way, that hasn't even just been like I had to have that realization and move forward. That's had multiple rungs on its ladder of every time I reach a point, I've had to go, oh, okay, here's how I'm limiting my thinking right now, whether that's what's possible in terms of revenue targets, whether that's how I compare myself to other business owners that I'm connected with. And, oh, my business is just this little thing, whereas yours is this big, amazing thing. And having to just consistently challenge my own limitations and my own thinking, and realize that the business will only ever grow as much as I do. And so I have to continue to relentlessly analyze and assess my own views and look at where I'm getting in my own way and clear the path for myself in order to continue the journey of growth. So that's hands down been the biggest challenge ever in the business sort of world, but also the most fun transformational experience on both a personal and a business level.
Okay.
And business, without business there would have been no catalyst for that. So but my entire life, every single component of my life has changed multiple times throughout that last 5 years because of that single realization.
So what you're saying is that mindset is the biggest challenge you've had. And I think maybe that is the challenge for almost every entrepreneur, is that mindset, that self-belief. Yes, we do have what am I doing here? So what gives me, and I've been asked this before, what gives you the right to actually speak on this? Well, because you're doing it, you've done it. You haven't gone to university, but you've just done it by doing. You've learned by doing. And and especially in today's age, sure, we need to be able to write, we need to be able to present well, speak well, be able to put together a proposal, be able to send an email, be able to speak well. So what are some of the other challenges moving forward in this time of the pandemic? Because you can't, the other one is you can't go and visit customers really. Is that sort of, that must be a big challenge now.
Absolutely. So much of our work was face-to-face. And we did have a couple of clients that we had just started projects with prior to, the end of March when it hit in full force. And so we literally sort of signed on the dotted line the week before, and then all of a sudden, I'm not really sure if we should travel. And then a couple of weeks later, nobody is allowed to travel. So the biggest challenges in the context of all of that, we were able to fairly easily move the structure that we have to an online forum, because there's nothing really that we would do face to face that we couldn't do via a video conference with a slightly different lens on it. But the biggest challenge we had, I think, was more so maintaining a rapport, and that face-to-face rapport building that you get when you can go and sit down and have a coffee with somebody and you have a little bit more of an informal connection with them. And our clients became so distracted by everything else going on in the world that where we normally would have completed something in 2 weeks, it took us 2 months because we kept having reschedules, or we needed them to send us a document that then was 3 weeks later than it should have been. And so that was our primary challenge moving through that period. And certainly not the only one. We also definitely saw the business world go quiet, because while contact centers were scrambling to respond to this and all of a sudden stand up work from home capability in a week, one thing that they didn't have capacity and time and energy for was vetting a consulting partner to help them do that. They just needed to get on with it and react. And so we, as a consulting community, I was chatting to one of my friendly competitors earlier this week, and they said exactly the same thing. We just weren't needed during that time because they didn't have, it was sort of too much. Their heads were full already and their hands were full already, and they just didn't have the capacity. So they just took it all on their own shoulders and ran with it. So we did have a bit of a quiet period, and it took us a while to get through the projects that we did have on the books, but we're definitely starting to see the rebound of that now, and we're getting busier. So
okay, well that's good to hear. So what are some of the tools? Yeah. So what are some of the tools you use to actually, I suppose, create that rapport with a client that you normally would get face to face? So what collaborative tools, what communication tools are you using
Yep.
currently that you've maybe had to either reinvent or you've had to bring on board? What are some of the tools you use to actually work with clients in this current situation, pandemic?
Yeah, so we've been adopters of Zoom for a while, as you mentioned earlier. We've got a largely virtual team, and so we've used Zoom for a long time to have our own team collaborations, and so our use of that has definitely stepped up in implementing to clients. And the primary way I think we addressed building that rapport and simplifying and streamlining, where we would normally be on site, and so therefore we can just have a conversation to sort out what time that meeting should be or that workshop. We instead just reimagined our customer journey, and we put as much self-service type capability and automation into that process as possible. So we use a booking platform called Calendly, where we sort of create the framework, and then somebody on their end can go and figure out what times best suit their internal people, since we can't sit down side by side and do that. And let's be honest, who wants to sit on a Zoom call and sift through calendars trying to find an appropriate time? And so we just focused on making those things that needed to happen easy for our customers. We use the Office 365 suite internally, and so we really stepped up the use of Microsoft Teams as our core sort of collaboration platform, which in some clients included our clients as part of that platform as well, and in others we use their internal collaboration capability depending on what their preference is. But the other critical part of it all for me and for our business was the collaboration that needed to happen at a team level. So much of the greatness in our delivery comes from a team that's really well gelled together, that is doing all of the collaboration they need to do, and that's sharing knowledge and insights. And so the use of Teams to achieve that outcome, to have a centralized hub where we kept all of our information, was we really amped that up, and that was incredibly successful. So we still have a long way to go in how we continue to use that platform, but that will ultimately, regardless of when we go back to face, that will become a really strong pillar of how we run the business internally today.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Trying to create business processes that can work in a virtual distributed environment. I have a team that sits between the Philippines, Hungary, USA, Melbourne, Sydney, and for example, just launching this podcast, I had to sit down and work through. So how can we make this a process that works well? And there's a bit of blood, sweat, and tears right at the beginning, because I had to come up to speed on how do we record, what technology do we use. We decided to use Zoom instead of Skype. Then the quality of the recording. Right, so this became a real challenge in terms of what is the process. And so eventually, after the blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of learning, bouncing forward, outside, my outsourced podcast editor, audio producer, Dave, worked with him. And then I had marketing guy in Hungary, then I had Miroslav, and then I had Will, my editor in Sydney. And look, I only catch up with Will face to face. In fact, we're catching up tomorrow afternoon. But face to face, just to create that, I suppose, being human, really.
Yeah.
So we catch up for a drink and we'll talk about things. And but today, for me, the podcast publishing process, from booking to recording to editing and then to publishing and then to promoting, is pretty seamless now, which has been great. And look, I could have outsourced all of it, and I said, no, I'd rather build the IP internally. But and what tool do you use for collaborating? Like, we use Trello here, which is an Atlassian tool.
It is.
Yeah. So what tool do you use for collaborating projects? And
Internally, we use Asana for that. We have used, and sometimes we use Trello when our client side is using it, and so we need to collaborate on their platform. Very familiar with Trello, but Asana is our internal sort of business collaboration application. It's where we have all of our, here's our template checklist for when we onboard somebody. Here's our template checklist for when we do this, and that, and then how I manage my day and how each of my team members that manage their own to-do lists and their own activities, and how we manage project plans for client delivery, and so we are all in on Asana for all of that.
Right. Yes. The challenge is trying to use tools that can scale, that are also easy to use. Like, look, even though I work in a technology environment, I'm not a programmer, so anything that sort of is much more complex than Word or Google Docs, I'm sort of going run for the hills. Like, I don't do my own editing for the audio, or I give that to everyone else. So my job is more the strategist, trying to work on the business rather than in it. And that's been a challenge for me, certainly. So maybe just, are there any funny stories like that? I'm sure you've come across some funny stories or happenings in call centers over the years. Is there any that you can remember that sort of stand out to you?
Oh Lord. Look, there's absolutely funny stories, you know, day in, day out. I don't know that I've got any front of mind. The main thing that I think I'm a bit more scarred by some of the challenging stories, because contact centers are a unique beast. They're the place where whether you are, you know, the person who knits jumpers and has 27 cats at home. I've got a cat too, so no, you know, no criticism there on that front. Or whether you're covered in tattoos and you have a mohawk, or it doesn't matter what walk of life you're from. Contact centers seem to attract this real diversity of people, and so I think there's more. Probably more funny stories and interesting happenings that come from the team that work within a contact center, more so even than perhaps the customer interactions. Although if I scoured my memory, I'm sure I could find an interesting customer one.
That's all right. I put you on the spot there. That's it. So we don't have to worry about that. Now, I think just to maybe to wrap things up, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on where the future you see it from customer care is going. We sort of touched on a little bit. So and things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and also the other big change, as we know, we've talked about already, is trying to work in a more virtual way now, because everyone's actually had to. Call centers used to be 400 people in a building. Now it's work from home a lot, isn't it? So
yeah.
where do you see like technology such as artificial intelligence playing a role into the future for customer care? And not just customer care, but I suppose outreach as well. So there's inbound as well as outbound. So where do you see artificial intelligence playing out?
So that's like, I'll have to keep myself somewhat focused on that, because both of those questions I could just go off on a tangent for the next 3 years about. The artificial intelligence and sort of natural processing type stuff is so exciting for our industry, because there has traditionally been a lot of it which is incredibly repetitive, right? Hi, can I update my address, please? Right? There's no reason you should ever have to speak to a human to do something that is incredibly, we'll call it low value, in terms of it doesn't provide me a lot of value. In fact, I shouldn't ever have to speak to somebody to do that. I should be able to self-service. But in the case that I can't, then at the very least, I should be talking to a robot or some kind of intelligence engine to help me do that. And so the low value repetitive tasks, what has traditionally been done in the past is outsourcing those to lower cost human fueled centers located offshore. Hence, you know, one of the things contact centers are known for is having a high amount of offshore contact center functions. I think AI is going to replace that, because I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but we did a study on this a couple of years back, that it is significantly cheaper to automate something than it is to outsource it. So the AI side of things takes that automation to the next level, in that you can effectively automate a customer conversation. So it's not simply a if this then that type transaction, but it can learn and access so much more information from sort of knowledge sources that a human ever could. And so where I see that happening, and how I think it's going to impact the industry, is that all of those lower value, high touch point, high effort tasks will ultimately be in the hands of a robot. And where we will find the human interaction taking place is where it is an incredibly high value reaction, as in it's particularly sensitive. Maybe it's, services like Lifeline and things like that. You're never going to speak to a robot, right? You need the human touch. Where it's high value financially for a business, or strategically for a business to speak to their customer. And so those sorts of things will be the cream at the top of the carton that get managed by humans, and everything else will, even if the conversation happens with a human, will be processed, and all of the work behind the scenes will be done by a robot. What that will ultimately mean is that where at the moment being a customer contact representative is, for many people, it's the job that they do when they come out of uni and they're sort of trying to figure out what it is they want to do with their life, or school if you don't go to uni. And then some people go, oh, this is actually a really cool, fun, crazy environment, and I'm going to stick around here and make a career out of it. It's not a coveted type role. People don't go, oh, my aspiration one day is to be on the phones in a contact center, right? But I see it heading in that direction. I see it heading into being an incredibly strategically valued role within an organization, because it will be so rare to have that voice to voice or face to face in a video context type account management interaction with a customer. So I think AI is going to have a drastic impact, and I don't know that Australia are going to be early adopters of that. I think we'll see a lot more of that happening internationally before we typically leap in after somebody else has proven the concept. But I do think that coming through this pandemic, as we spoke about earlier, has absolutely escalated people's desire to kind of get their hands on the future sooner than they possibly would have otherwise. And in terms of that virtual working environment that you mentioned, I strongly believe that we'll be in a position in the future where the answers to the questions that are being asked by customers will be so readily accessible by an AI knowledge capability, that you could simply, a bit like freelancer, where you go out and you say, I've got a job to do this piece of marketing or to do this graphic design thing, and you farm out work and you pay on completion of that work successfully. That there'll be a lot more of that in terms of the way that we staff our customer contact interaction. There's absolutely no reason that I should have to take an 8-hour role taking calls from one type of customer for one organization if we've got AI enabled knowledge, right? And so the answers are easily accessible, and security is going to be the main sort of sticking point to get over there, as it is with AI, as it is with a lot of technology advancement. Our security protocols are the things that are top of mind around all that stuff at the moment. But I sort of see a bit of a marketplace where businesses can be more efficient to say, we're going to get 5 people's worth of calls at midday on Tuesday, and so I need this many people logged in to take calls for that period, and they can go out to an international marketplace and fill those roles with freelancers who pick up particular particular work for particular periods of time. So I believe the days of being a contact center representative for this organization as my full-time role are numbered. That's my hot prediction.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'll keep an eye on that one.
That's right. You never know. You've definitely got the voice for it. So
yeah, I find interesting that you said that automation ends up being far cheaper than outsourcing, and also the role of AI in that automation becomes important. And so, and in the past, we actually outsourced a lot to places where a lot cheaper labour exists, and we all do that. Well, most of us do. But I suppose as we more automate and I suppose they can be bringing things back to Australia or back to home countries, like supply chains, I think, have been challenged with the pandemic as well. Locally made is going to become more important as trust in different players around the world falls. So automation is going to make it easier for companies, well, to bring what was previously cheap labour, such as in China and India, bring back to Australia, because we can use technology to do that now, and automation.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Frances, for your insights, both in your business, and I think the big learning that we could take away from this is the importance of mindset as being an entrepreneur. That's really important. And also processes. That's the other thing that you certainly highlighted, that how do I create a proper business? How do I productize a service? Which was your aha moment.
Yes.
In tears in pajamas on the kitchen floor with a whiteboard. So, so thank you very much, Frances, for sharing your insights on your journey. And so I've learned a lot today, and thank you very much for your time. It's been great to actually.
My absolute pleasure. It's been fabulous chatting with you. I can't believe an hour's disappeared so quickly. Thank you so much.
Okay.